And you must know these basic things like it's the back of your hand, not for the purpose of impressing them, but just so that it's a lifestyle, something you breathe and know intrinsically. What is a private placement memorandum? PPMs are disclosure documents, meaning you come in with sets of documents and they also come in with sets of documents that says, this is how I intend to use this is what I want to do, this is how I'm going to do it, and this is what I expect from you because I have the equitable interest in it and I am the one giving you the value because this is my private property to which you are compensating me for its use on a public level to benefit your entity and potentially the public at large, aka compensation for private property based on the Fifth Amendment, aka initial public offering. PPMs are disclosure documents used by small businesses raising money through private security transactions. That's just the basic summary. A private placement memorandum, PPM, is a legal document provided to prospective investors. See this term investor? Keep it in mind. A lot of people in today's world, whether you're looking at any given level of business, whether you're looking at real estate, whether you're looking at businesses, whether you're looking at technology, marketing, whatever it is, you will hear ever so often many people throw around this word. I'm an investor, investment. But there are different types of investors. For instance, those who are day traders. If you ask them what they do, they'll tell you they trade, all right? Some might tell you that they're investors. Let me tell you the truth. Whoever is a day trader that's telling you they're an investor, they are lying to you. Now, they might be doing it unwittingly, or they might be doing it wittingly. They might know they're lying, they might not know they're lying. If you are the one that's trading on something on the market, you are exactly as it sounds. You're the trader. The one who placed that value on the market to which you are trading on is the investor. You who is now retroactively responding to the playing field that someone has placed in, you are not the investor. The one who places the playing field and the value onto the playing field is the investor. And there are mainly three types of investors. And it's defined in something called the Securities Act of 1933. Interesting enough, 1933 was when some of the bankruptcy at North America occurred. And it's also defined in the Investment Company Act of 1940. We'll be going over that later. But keep this word investor in mind. Believe it or not, that is what you are going to be doing. In the past video about the Social Security number, I mentioned those different types of investors just as an introduction and as a heads up. Let's focus on one thing at a time. A private placement memorandum, PPM, is a legal document provided to prospective investors. So if you are the investor with equitable interest, that also means the other side will be providing you a PPM also. So PPM is not just a one-sided thing that only you have. Those other people coming to you will be also presenting their PPMs to you as much as you will. And then you look into the contract and then you cross out certain things. Remember I made a video regarding the significance of red ink? Yeah, as always, there's a reason why that was done prior to this. Because those principles you will be utilizing when these PPMs are proposed to you as to when someone steps to you with the intent of compensating you for your equitable interests in that private property called the legas, aka creature of law, to which the birth certificate has a monetary value. See, what would pull their legs to come to you is partly because you've done things and taken steps for them to do so. By presenting some value out there. And partly also because they will cross-reference the information and realize someone has a perfected lien and perfected interest and perfected security interest on it. And before they start doing anything, they would have to come to you first. That's half of it. The other half is you now going out there saying, look, I have this and so and so and so and so. Put this out there so that all these people now have an open door to come to me. That's the other half that will cause them to begin to come to you. And when they do, the language that you'll be speaking is going to be in the PPMs, which is a collection of documents. I know most people have never heard of anything like this before, so I'm taking it slowly and I'm making a lot of explanations. Some people might have heard this in a consultation in greater detail, and trust me, this is not repetitive. This is significant enough, because I keep telling you, one day will come whereby all these videos I'm uploading, they would disappear like the wind. Once I feel like it's sufficient for me to do my job, I'm gone. So these repetitive videos are significant. They are being done for a purpose, so that you get it. I'd rather repeat one thing a million times and you get it than only mention it one time and leave it vague. And when it's left vague, it's done so specifically because the time is not yet ready. And when the time is ready, you will then begin to slowly hear the consistency of that certain information over and over and over, because that's the appropriate time for it to be explained, because certain premise was necessary first. A private placement memorandum, PPM, is a legal document provided to prospective investors when selling stock or another security in a business. The business will be those people who have any given nature of insurance company or banking business, and usually they just rape that as legis, just like they do when they bundle mortgages and promissory note and so and so. But you've created yours and you've marked it up. And then you've done a database injunction on it to bar them based on private rights and obligation of contract, presumably. When they come to you, what they do it, because the way they liquidate the value of that birth certificate and any other derivative attached to it is through selling stock. Back in once upon a time, they used to do it more blatantly, where they would put ropes and chains in people's necks, wrists, and ankle, put them on podium, sell them with certificates. They would literally give the slave owner a receipt. Like you would go to a store and buy an apple, and then you go to the cashier, they scan it, they give you a receipt. Back then, they used to do people just like that. They inspect them physically, they give them a receipt that, well, here's a receipt that you got a slave from us. Come back again. You're a good customer. You have more stocks of people we've taken from more than we're selling to you. Look at her. She got a big butt, doesn't she? You would like to mate with that, wouldn't you? Come on. And here's a certificate. Look, I even have the certificate. If you don't like her, bring it back in 90 days. I'll take it back. Don't worry. You can break her arm. It's cool. No problem. See this man? Yeah. He was once a warrior. He killed 16 people, but you know, that skill can still be used to labor your farm for you for free. The only cost is just if you just buy him now and we give you a receipt that you got it from us, so you can establish a relationship with us, because we have a trust. Trust is nothing new. They've had trust back then also. Even before all these digital ages technology and all this preservation and legislatures that we're able to just show on the internet, they had trust. Trust law is so ancient that it predates all the stories in the Bible. The Akkadians, the Sumerians, they all had trust. Even when you read some of the tablets, even the Emerald Tablets of Thoth speaks about trust law. The age that we're in and the medium that we're readily able to recognize it with doesn't necessarily limit its origin to what we readily have available. Back then, that's how they did trust. When I say back then, I mean in recent times. It's not that ancient. We all know about, quote, slavery, so we don't need to speak about that, albeit there's some falsehood involved when it comes to transferring some people from one part of the continent or the other. But I don't like focusing on that. I like focusing on the functional stuff that people can do when it comes to application of what that thing has evolved to, whether the origin as to how they explained it was truthful or false. Let's focus on now and how you can free yourself. But that analogy of how slaves were in fact used, regardless of who it used to look like actually compared to the falsehood they purported, let's put that to the side. Let's look at the fact that back then slaves were sold and certificates were issued. In today's world, those certificates is no different than this same thing called a birth certificate and its derivatives. And the slave owners are the people who own these big Fortune 500 companies, which will be some of the companies coming to you. Have you ever heard some popular rapper, Jay-Z, talk about he owns his own slave? That's what you are doing. When they say, I'm a businessman, I'm not a businessman. Most people who are a fan of all these entertainment people don't really know what they're speaking of. These entertainers figured it out, but they're not going to tell you. They're going to rub it in your face right in front of you while knowing that the people listening to it are slaves themselves through the invisible strings of private rights and obligation of contract. Maybe those with ears will hear them. But even then, they're not going to show you and explain all these things to you. They're going to brag about it and then have private conversations of what they're doing. And you see that they're making more money. These artists are not making money from their record label. Make no mistake on that one. Record labels do not make you a millionaire, because before all the other people get their royalties and cut from the record label, that's just another form of slavery. All these people, popular, that a lot of people listen to, they know about this. Make no mistake. They know about this, but they're not going to tell you these details. Why should they? Why the hell would they sit down and spend hours and hundreds or thousands of hours over many hundreds of videos explaining these things to you, when they can keep enjoying their lives and keep creating private contracts? So the selling of stocks is a certificate attached to each soul based on the vital records of birth certificate. And instead of them just prostituting it as a free-for-all, whereby they realize this thing leads to war, hate, enmity, let's be more effective with it by indirectly enslaving people, but in a much more effective way, because at the end of the day, we're going to cause them to use those same derivatives when they work. We're going to tax them through it. We're going to keep them under our corporation. Most people don't know the entity they work for. You work for a hospital. That hospital you're working for is being sold in the stock market as a value. And that stock market that that company has is attached to that social security number of that employee that acts as its extension or auxiliary. If you're an employee, you're an extension of that entity. That's why you're being taxed on its behalf. You're paying its taxes, state and federal taxes. They throw it on you as its employee. It becomes tax exempt, you pay for it. Part of that is because the social security number of that employee is attached to the value of that company that's in the stock market. That's slavery. No different than putting rope on your necks, changing your wrists and your ankles. They've perfected it. And instead of that being done loosely out there, what they will now do is come to you because you've set things up based on private contracts and you've gotten your own house in order using trust law. Trust law and contract law goes hand in hand. They will be the ones selling stocks. They will now come to you, the one who have perfected equitable interest, aka you own your own slave, aka your trust owns that in Vegas, because they realize they can't do anything with it. You've locked it in through a non-UCC, you've done a database injunction, and you've done other things on the back end. During the patron call, someone asked a question regarding how to contract the banks, and I explained something about the numbers that each regional bankers have. That specific number being something called NMLS number. When you look at what this number is, which is basically an employee ID of certain types of bankers, and sometimes they even generally give it to all bankers. This number is based on the mortgage system. And you might think, well, mortgage is just for property. No, it's not. Mortgage is anything whereby a pledge is made and something is used as a collateral. Simple as that. When people hear the word mortgage, they think of a house, and that's it. Why? Because, well, the house itself or the land and the appurtenance called house is the collateral. The complete 56-minute videos on the Patreon page. Take care. Best of luck.